You know, in the world of sports, you've probably heard the saying, a win is a win. Doesn't matter if it was a nail biter or a total blowout, the bottom line is what counts. Well, it turns out a really similar mindset has taken over the world of academic research, and it's created this intense, high-stakes pressure cooker where the motto is basically publish or perish. In this explainer, we're going to dive into how we got here, what it's doing to science, and where we might go from here. So, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get into what this new bottom line in academia really is. Then, we'll look at the rise of the rankings to figure out how we ended up here. After that, we'll really weigh the pros and cons, the price of getting that A, and finally, we'll explore some ideas for moving beyond just counting publications.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Academia's New Bottom Line. It really all boils down to this one simple but incredibly powerful idea that has totally redefined the game. Yeah, this sports analogy just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? The focus is 100% on the final score. How you played, the brilliant moves, the messy plays, the near misses, none of it matters. All that matters is getting that W in the win column. And here it is. This is the academic version of that same thinking. Here, the win is getting your paper published in a top-tier A journal. The phrase, an A is an A, basically means that where you publish can matter more than what you publish. The prestige of the journal, that A, can completely overshadow the actual substance of the research.
So what is an A journal anyway? Well, think of them as the major leagues of academic publishing. They're the elite, the most prestigious, the household names in any field. Getting your work into one of these is pretty much the gold standard. It's how you get promoted, get tenure, and build your reputation.
And this leads to something called the journal proxy method. Look, deans and administrators are busy people, right? They can't possibly read every single paper. So they use a shortcut. They use the journal's reputation as a proxy or a stand-in for the paper's quality. The logic is simple. If it's published in a top journal, it must be top research. It makes judging a researcher's value seem easy and objective.
So how did this whole system become so powerful? I mean, it wasn't always like this. Let's dig into the history in Section 2, the rise of the rankings.
The shift was, well, it was dramatic. We moved from an older system where your peers would actually read your work deeply and judge it on its intellectual merit, to this new system that feels a lot more objective. Why? Because you just count. You just tally up the number of publications in an approved list of journals. Simple, clean, quantifiable.
So what was pushing this change? The first big driver was the need for performance management. As universities started to run more like big corporations, they wanted a standardized, almost factory-like way to hand out rewards and promotions. These journalists seemed like the perfect solution, a fair, verifiable metric that could get rid of personal bias. The problem is, what started as a helpful guideline quickly became a hard and fast rule.
The second driver, accountability. This was especially true for business schools, which went from being practical trade schools to major research powerhouses. Suddenly, they had to justify their existence and their high costs to everyone from big donors to students paying tuition. Counting A journal hits was the perfect way to do it. It gave them a simple, powerful number to splash across marketing brochures and university ranking reports.
Okay, so this system is in place. But what are the real consequences? For the researchers? For knowledge itself? Let's get into the good, the bad, and the ugly in Section 3, the price of an A. Now, to be fair, there are some positives. The system creates really clear standards, which can protect researchers from biased evaluations and give younger scholars a clear roadmap for success. But, and this is a huge but, the downsides are severe. We're talking about a rise in shady research practices, a focus on quantity over quality, and just crushing the motivation of researchers. Let's zoom in on that first negative point. This might just be the most damaging outcome of all, the rise of QRPs, or questionable research practices. So what are these? Basically, they're all the little methodological shortcuts, the statistical games, the corner cutting that researchers can do to make their results look shinier and more exciting than they really are, all in the name of getting that coveted A publication.
For instance, p-hacking is kind of like torturing your data until it confesses to something. Harking is like shooting an arrow at a barn door and then drawing the bullseye around wherever it landed. And then you have things like sham co-authorship to pad your resume. All of these point to the same troubling truth. When the pressure to publish is this high, the temptation to bend the rules of science gets really, really strong.
And the fallout from this is huge. You can see it has this massive ripple effect. The biggest casualty, at 40%, is research integrity itself, which undermines the public's trust in science. But it also stifles innovation, because who's going to take a risk on a weird idea? And it crushes researcher motivation and makes a lot of research less relevant to the real world.
When you boil it all down, research becomes monetized. An A publication has a clear value attached to it for your salary, for your promotion. And that means all the essential things that you can't count, like really investing time to mentor a student or contributing to your department, they get pushed to the side. In this system, if you can't count it, it basically doesn't count.
Okay, I know that all sounds pretty bleak, but it is not all doom and gloom. There is a path forward. So for our last section, let's talk about how we could actually improve this system.
The proposed solution really comes down to 3 key steps. First, universities need to broaden their goals. Second, we need to adopt better ways of measuring success. And third, we need to develop new skills to evaluate research properly. Let's focus on that second step, because it's absolutely crucial.
So, what do better measures actually look like? Well, for starters, we have to move beyond a simple A or not A binary. Instead, we could look at a whole portfolio of things. How often does a paper get cited by other scientists? Is it showing up in textbooks? Did it win any awards? This approach means actually reading the paper for its quality and, maybe most importantly, asking the researchers themselves to step up and explain why their work matters. It puts the human element back into the equation.
And listen, this isn't just some pipe dream. There's a real global movement called DORA, the San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment, that is pushing for these exact changes. Thousands of universities, funders, and scholars have already signed on, which shows there's a real hunger for a better way to do things.
And that brings us to the final question, really the one that's at the heart of this whole thing. In our race for a simple, easy-to-measure bottom line, have we accidentally created a system that rewards playing the game more than it rewards genuine discovery? Is our relentless pursuit of A's actually hurting the pursuit of knowledge itself? That's definitely something worth thinking about.